This might be the last chance to buy an E46 M3 at a reasonable price. Values continue to surge, and soon enough most people won't be able to afford one. I've owned my M3 for nearly 2 years and I absolutely love the car. Today I'll give you guys 5 reasons why you should buy one before it's too late. Reason number 1 you should consider buying an E46 M3 is because of the sweet sound this car produces. But instead of just telling you guys, let me just show you. It's definitely a little bit on the raspy side, especially since I installed active auto work headers onto the car. But even with the stock configuration for the US market, it's still a little bit raspy. Some people like it, some people don't. I find it to sound a bit exotic, so I don't have an issue with it. It doesn't quite sound like a Civic rasp, almost like a matured one. For those of you wondering what the E46 M3 sounds like stock without aftermarket parts, well, here's a quick video clip. That's the very first thing that I fell in love with the E46 M3 when I first bought it and got to drive it for the first time. It was the sound that Inline 6 made. It's just unbeatable, guys. This car always wants to be kept in high revs. It's when it sounds the best and it's just alive at those higher RPM ranges. It's so good. Woo! Yo, go buy yourself an E46 M3 now. My God, this car really puts a smile on my face, guys. And it would for you as well. Out of all the M3 generations, in my opinion, the E46 one has to be the most timeless one. It's old enough to be respected by the old folks, but it's also nice and modern enough to be loved by the newer generation people as well. And I would have to say, out of all the BMWs I've ever owned, this is probably the one that gets me the most attention on the road because it kind of bridges that gap between older folks and younger people. It's like right in the middle, and it never seems to age. This is a car that looks just as modern today as it did when it first came out back in the early 2000s. It's nearly impossible not to like this generation M3. The wide stance, the aggressive front end, and all the BMW cues up front with the headlights and the perfectly sized kidney grills. Honestly, it's so hard not to stare at this car when you see it on the road. This right here has to be my favorite design of the E46 M3, is how wide that quarter panel gets, how wide those fenders are, and how much wheel and tire you can fit underneath the arches here. These are 10.5 wheels, 275 wide tires, and it looks so aggressive even from this angle. Just look at it, it looks thick. The interior of the E46 M3 is just as timeless as the outside of the car, guys. It just doesn't get old and it looks phenomenal. Just the overall design of the dashboard, the center console, nothing looks too boxy, nothing looks too cluttered. The side door cards right here look very clean, free from a lot of electronic switches you find on newer cars. And let's say you want some of the modern features that newer cars come with today. Well, it's an easy upgrade for this car. You can replace the old head unit for one like I did here. It has Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, Bluetooth, and I swapped out the original steering wheel here for a custom one from Ozza Auto Wheel, and it really spices up the interior. I get it, a lot of you purists probably won't agree with it, but for those of you guys that are interested, these are very nice touches. I actually made a video both on the steering wheel and the head unit. I'll leave a link to those down in the description below. This car is rather small for today's standard, but it's not uncomfortably small. Like if you've ever gotten inside of an E30 BMW, I'm not saying those are uncomfortable, but you kind of feel like a giant. The seats are rather small. E36 wasn't too bad, but the E46, this is the perfect cabin size for a sports car like this E46 M3. The only thing I would wish for is maybe like a taller back support for the seats here. But you know what? That's not too much to complain about. Odd interruption, I know. I'm sorry, but I wanted to shamelessly plug this awesome E46 M3 t-shirt that I have for sale on vehiclevirals.com. Super soft and a badass design of the iconic M3 with fading M stripes. And guys, peep the details. CSL wheels on deck, baby. I have less than 10 left for each size. Help support your boy, I'll leave a link to purchase one down in the description below. Handling is where the M3 shines. It seriously stays planted around turns at super high speeds and feels so controllable. There's never a point where you feel like you're not in control. Of course, the naturally aspirated engine helps with linear power delivery, making twisties a walk in the park. The size of the car is a big factor as well. It feels nimble, the car responds fast, and the driver in return gets more of a feel. The E46 M3 is the perfect track car for sure. Car feels so controllable and predictable. My God, woo! This car handles amazing, guys. Nice turn. Leaving the turn. It's like the car is glued to the road. Such an amazing feeling, guys. Such an amazing feeling. I hope you guys are getting as much enjoyment as I am just by watching the video and watching my excitement. Probably one of the most important and legitimate reasons to buy an E46 M3 today is because they're going up in prices. They're not losing value, and assuming you buy one today that is not a lemon, one that is well sorted out, if you decide to sell it, let's say a year or two from now, not only will you make your money back, there's a high possibility you'll make even more money back. Do not let this car slip away like a lot of you guys did with the E36 M3. Those are going for crazy amount of money right now. I'm looking at some of these prices right now, and they're pretty reasonable even with today's kind of crazy market. Don't miss out on this opportunity. While these prices aren't anything close to the steal that I got for my M3 for just $3,000, they are pretty reasonable. Convertibles, of course, are a bit less desirable, so you can find them all day for less than $20,000. You can find a lot of them for just over $10,000. Coupes are a different story, but if you're patient enough, you'll come across a pretty good deal. SMG equipped ones normally go for less than the almighty manual 6-speed. Pro tip though, if you can get a killer deal on an SMG one, go for it and get a manual conversion done. It's the same transmission as the manual, with the only major difference being the bell housing. That's what I did and saved a ton of money versus buying a manual M3. I'm feeling a bit generous, so here's another pro tip. Join Facebook groups like the E46 M3 Classified. That's where you'll find some of the best and cheapest deals for these cars. Peep this clean M3 for only $15,000. Not the ideal interior color for most, but it can easily be swapped. Just look at it like this. You really have nothing to lose. You can buy one, drive it, essentially rent it for as long as you want, and if you ever decide to get rid of it, you get your money back, or like an investment, you make even more money on your initial money that you put into the car, you know, assuming that you didn't untastefully modify it or wreck it. I mean, it's a win-win. But my guess is that if you buy one and spend enough time with it, you're probably not gonna want to sell it. But hey, the backup plan is there in case you do want to follow through with it. You guys are gonna absolutely laugh at me for reason number 5. Buy one because they're reliable. BMW? Reliable? Yo, Christian, what the f are you talking about? Well, let's put it like this. I've owned this M3 for about 2 years, and I also own this 335 that's equipped with the N54 motor, which a lot of people consider this model here extremely unreliable, probably one of the most unreliable ones from BMW. But this car at 173,000 miles and that car at 143,000 miles, this one breaks a lot less frequent than that car. And I drive this car more than that car. And I drive this car a lot harder than that car. Part of the reason that this engine is near bulletproof is, well, it's an inline 6. BMW has tons of experience with these engines, and compared to the 335 M54 that has a turbocharged engine, this one is naturally aspirated. It doesn't get nearly as hot. I mean, don't get me wrong, it still gets pretty hot since it revs all the way to the moon and back, but it's not as bad. Okay, so here's the fine print. The E46 M3 can be reliable, but only if you take care of 3 of the main weak points that this car suffers from. First being replacing the rod bearings. Even a BMW recall couldn't solve the issue, well, for many at least. If you have no idea when they were last replaced, do yourself a favor and get an oil analysis done, or just get them replaced altogether. In return, you'll have a peace of mind and not a blown motor. Second is to get the subframe mounting points reinforced. SMG equipped M3s normally suffer from this more because of their aggressive shifts. That was the case with mine. The subframe was at the verge of falling off the car. And lastly, monitor the Vanos unit. Mine is fine, but many suffer from a faulty one. It all really comes down to maintenance when it comes to BMW, something that a lot of people tend not to follow, guys. Maintenance first. I mean, there are some models where maintenance don't really matter. E60 M5. Don't believe me? 1 E60 M5, 2 E60 M5, 3 E60 M5, 4 E60 M5, and guess what? All blown motor. Mic drop. And those are 5 very good reasons why you should consider buying an awesome car like the E46 M3. Make sure and hit the like button. And like I said earlier, lots of episodes on this car coming to the channel very soon, so make sure to subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching. Till next time.